Welcome back to Hannity. Now, we've been questioning on this program if there are deep state, Obama holdover operatives trying to delegitimize the commander-in-chief. Now, we're not going to stop asking questions. And joining us now with reaction, author of the New York Times bestseller Treason, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor NEWT Gingrich. So, you know John Solomon. You've known him for years, AP, Washington Times, Sarah Carter. You know, a legitimate reporter. They're saying not only that was a FISA court warrant approved, now they think a second warrant was approved. In spite of the investigation, zero proof of any collusion between Trump and the Russians. This has been the media narrative now going on, what, 6, 7 months at this point?
Sure.
What is your response?
Well, I think, first of all, it's very likely that the deep state, the professional bureaucrats, the people who run the government on a day-to-day basis, did do things that were very opposed to Donald Trump. And the fact is that he was overwhelmingly opposed by the civil service. I think it's also likely that there was a covering up, no, this is probably the wrong word, but that they were willing to be sloppy and to be more aggressive. I mean, the whole thing that was done to General Flynn was totally outrageous, violates every civil libertarian in the country, involved the leaking, which is a felony, the leaking of secret information, which was done in such a way as to hurt an American citizen, even though when you looked at it in detail, it had no meaning. It didn't matter. By the way, you'll notice that the Washington Post and the New York Times, in their continuing war on the Trump administration, went way out of their way to try to smear and destroy Attorney General Sessions. Very similar kind of pattern we're seeing, whether it's in leaking or it is in wiretapping or it is in a variety of other collusions between the deep state bureaucracy and the deep state media.
They're reporting that not only was a FISA warrant issued, but another warrant was issued. And the FISA warrant was for servers for the Trump, I guess, monopoly. So this is in the weeks leading up to a campaign. In a presidential election, you know, there's no telling what's on those servers. And I know that from my own interactions with people in the campaign, they were using Trump Organization email addresses.
Well, look, I think it's very clear that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees have to get deeply involved in this. And it may well be that the House and Senate Judiciary Committees, on behalf of our civil liberties, also have to get involved. But there's no question that the Congress has to get to the bottom of this. And again, I want to emphasize, a number of people have been committing felonies. They have been deliberately leaking secrets in a way which is illegal and which is dangerous to the United States, and it is a real problem.
Well, Obama expanded Executive Order 12333 to allow the sharing of this very highly, deeply top secret intelligence, Signet communications in the case of General Flynn, to be shared with 16 other agencies. He did it on his final 2 weeks out of the campaign. How important is Obama's role in this? He made the statement that we had no role in ordering this. But did he know about it? How important is that in question?
How can he say he had no role in ordering it if it was in fact a presidential directive, because it affects all 17 agencies?
Well, that part he did, but he had no role in seeking a FISA warrant. No, it wasn't ordered from the White House. And my question is...
Well, but let's go back to what he does clearly have a role in. You know, if you read carefully what it says, they didn't just say you can share secrets. They said you can share information which you don't even believe is true.
The dossier.
So you have all these rumors, all this gossip, which goes from NSA to 16 other agencies, one of whom leaks it to the New York Times, the Washington Post. Then it becomes a story. Now, it's a total lie at this point. Then it becomes a story. Then other TV channels pick it up and run with it for 3 straight days.
Do you remember the day that story about the dossier broke, BuzzFeed and CNN's hysterical, breathless coverage of this, as though this was the smoking gun? Well, they also say, Sarah Carter and John Solomon, they also say that they found no evidence, even though they had the 2 warrants. None whatsoever. None. Not one smidgen of evidence that backs up the claims by the media that they've been saying.
And you know, the former director of national intelligence, General Clapper, has said publicly, unequivocally, that in all the things he looked at, in all the reports he saw, there is zero evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, which would make you wonder, why is this still an issue? Except, of course, that the Democrats and the New York Times and Washington Post are desperate to do anything to slow down Donald Trump.
We got to take a break. More with Newt Gingrich right after this. We're going to talk about health care and much more. And this.
We actually ran on a repeal and replace plan. That's what this is, the repeal and replace plan we ran on. Now I am intent on making sure that we fulfill our promises.
Intramural squabbles existing in Republican ranks, a potential civil war on our hands. We'll ask the former speaker about that. And also, Michelle Malcolm will join us tonight as we continue on this very, very busy news night and the latest on the explosive WikiLeaks revelation. Straight ahead.
I'm prepared to lead our conference to doing what we said we would do in the election. We actually ran on a repeal and replace plan. That's what this is, the repeal and replace plan we ran on. Now I am intent on making sure that we fulfill our promises. What I want to tell my fellow citizens is that the nightmare of Obamacare is about to end. That we are doing what we said we would do in this campaign, which is repeal and replace this awful law that is crashing.
All right, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan vowing to fulfill the GOP's promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. President Trump met earlier this evening with members of the Freedom Caucus to discuss the new health care bill. As I said last night, they need to hammer out their differences because we cannot have a GOP civil war breaking out in the media. It's only going to hurt their ability to get things done, and that means hurt you, the American people. We continue now more with Newt Gingrich. The Club for Growth, Heritage Action, Americans for Prosperity, Freedom Works, the Freedom Caucus, some members of the study committee, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, are against this bill. Here's my question. This has been discussed as their primary agenda item, Mr. Speaker, for 8 years. They released a bill, they roll out a bill yesterday, and there's not consensus. Why didn't they build the consensus, finish the bill in the square that you told me about, how legislation gets made, how the sausage gets made, before they rolled it out? And then have, maybe I'm envisioning something that could never happen. A president with every Republican House member, every Republican senator behind him, this is our answer to Obamacare, and we're all in agreement, we're going to pass it today. Am I naive to think that something like that could have happened rather than the squabbling that's going on TV the last 24 hours?
Well, I think it might have been done, but it'd be very, very hard. I think there are two key things to remember about where we are. The first is this bill is the beginning of a 3 or 4 or 5 step process. This is not the only bill that's going to come down the road on health care. But they knew what the criticisms were before within their own ranks. And you can divide the criticisms in a couple of ways. One is, if you want to pass something very early, you're going to have to pass it under Senate reconciliation rules. Okay. That's just a fact. Right. Now, if that's what you're going to do, those rules define narrowly what can be in the bill. Understood. So at least half the complaints are about a reality that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are working with. Second. And that's legitimate, by the way. That's all true. Yeah, that's 100%. Right. Second, in the Senate, the margin is closer than it looks because it takes 50 votes plus Vice President Pence. That means you could lose 2. Now, you can lose 2 on the right. You can lose 2 on the left. You can lose 2 in the middle over things like for example, whether or not they're going to have opioid treatments or they're going to drop them, which for somebody like Senator Portman, who's made an enormous number of speeches on the opioid epidemic, really is central to him. It's not a right or left issue. It's a practical issue. So you have all this stuff going on at once. I think I probably would frankly have been pretty close to what Paul Ryan did. Bring a bill out, go to markups, allow amendments, then they go from Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means to a markup in the Budget Committee of the combined bill. Then you go to the Rules Committee, and remember, look, the Freedom Caucus can walk in and say, we want to put these amendments in order. And they can say, we're not going to vote for the rule unless we get some amendments. This is the legislative process. My only point would be, and I think it's fair from Paul Ryan's standpoint, to be slightly perplexed. I mean, this is not a perfect bill. I want to emphasize, this is the first of 5 or 6 reform efforts that are going to come out during the course of the year. Well, Tom Price last night said that this is going to be rolled out 3 different ways. So right. Well, that actually made me feel a little better.
but I wish
Well,
they would have explained it better.
Yeah, I think had they started originally, and I agree with this, and I think it's the one criticism that they and the president should take to heart. If they had started by saying, let us give you a context. You're going to get a first bill designed to get through the Senate, not designed to be perfect, designed to get through the Senate so the president can sign it as rapidly as possible. Big step towards repeal, and guess what? You're not going to get any Democrats. No Democrat's going to vote to repeal this.
Never.
So that means you got to carry a narrow burden.
Maybe I would have liked to have seen maybe a lot of these things resolved behind the scenes first. Maybe I'm naive.
Well, no, I just think there's sometimes in the and I do think if you look, for example, at the Medicaid reform, it may be the biggest conservative reform since the welfare reform bill of '96.
Look,
I mean, these are not small things.
But well, they've got to remember, they're going to now own this. They better get it right.
Well, and they better plan on a second bill, and they better plan on Tom Price doing a series of regulatory changes. This dance will go on all year. But I want to say one other thing that's really important. The Republicans cannot allow the Trump administration to fail on this first big effort. When you get done fighting, you get done complaining, you get done amending, virtually every Republican ought to vote yes. We'll have another fight in 6 weeks or 2 months, but it's very important.
I agree.
That President Trump have a win on this bill.
Big time. I totally agree with that. Mr. Speaker, always good to see you.